गुड इव्हनिंग. आता where do we get started? This is a big question and big issue. So this was the front line that I was talking to last week, कि जो already आलेला होता, but about which we couldn't do much on account of the fact कि उसके पहले वाला front line already pending था. So this is quite an interesting front line in terms of this entire case of mob lynching that you get to see in so many parts of India is concerned. I don't know, for a simple reason, because there is quite an element of fatigue about it. In the sense that साधारणपणे त्याच प्रकारच्या बातम्या वाचल्याच्या नंतर एका पॉईंटच्या नंतर जो एक कंटाळा येतो की ह्याच्यात काही वेगळं घडतच नाही. म्हणजे कुणीतरी कुणाला तरी कुठंतरी धरणे आणि त्याला मरेपर्यंत मारणे, आणि जर तो त्याच्यात मेला तर ठीक आहे, नाही मेला तर त्याच्यानंतर त्याला प्रत्यक्ष मारणे, ही जी काय ॲक्टिव्हिटी आहे इज व्हॉट इज नॉर्मली रेफर्ड टू ॲज लिंचिंग. आता इफ यू लुक ॲट द नंबर ऑफ स्टोरीज दॅट वी हॅव बीन हिअरिंग अबाउट इट एव्हर सिन्स दिस गव्हर्नमेंट केम इन टू पॉवर इन 2014, इट्स क्वाईट अ लार्ज नंबर. In the sense that, and there's something interesting about them that they happen in all parts of India. तर त्या आता असं काही असं राहिलेलं नाही की इट हॅपन्स ओनली इन सम पार्ट्स ऑफ इंडिया, इट हॅपन्स थ्रू आउट द कंट्री. इट प्रॅक्टिकली हॅपन्स नाव अबाउट एनी वन अँड एव्हरी वन. ओके, सो आता तो पण इश्यू राहिलेला नाही आहे की इज इट समथिंग दॅट इज टार्गेटिंग ओनली स्पेसिफिक सेक्शंस ऑफ द पॉप्युलेशन, तो वो भी नहीं है, इट टार्गेट्स प्रॅक्टिकली एव्हरीबडी. देयर इज समथिंग डीपली सेक्युलर अबाउट इट इन द सेन्स दॅट विथ दिस रिसेंट केस in which this Kashmiri police officer was killed, there increasingly is a sense that it's not just Hindus who are killing Muslims, it's also that Muslims are getting killed. It's practically everybody who is killing everybody. Okay, how does one make sense of this sort of an activity now? A, B, तो प्रश्न आहेच की should one at all make sense of it? म्हणजे as the Union Home Secretary said in so many good eloquent words, this is something that need not be focused on because this is something which has been happening in India for quite some period of time. म्हणजे लिंचिंग ही काही नवीन गोष्ट नाही आहे. लिंचिंग भारतात अनेक वर्षांपासून आणि त्यांचं तर म्हणणं अनेक शतकांपासून चालू आहे. इट्स हॅपनिंग फॉर सेंचुरीज. तो असं काही नव्याने काहीतरी घडतं आहे की ज्याचं काहीतरी एक आगळीक वाटलं पाहिजे किंवा ज्याचं काहीतरी एक वेगळं पण वाटलं पाहिजे, तर अशी कुठलीच गोष्ट नाही. तो ही तो हॅज अ पोझिशन विच सेज दॅट the reason why it is coming to the fore is precisely because it's getting more talked about. There are more videos, there are more news items, there are more posts on social media, and that's the reason why it seems that as if there's nothing else that is happening in this country other than something called as people lynching each other. Okay, म्हणजे चांगल्या गोष्टी घडत आहेत ना, बऱ्याच चांगल्या गोष्टी घडतात, आपण त्याच्याकडे लक्षच देत नाही. आपण फक्त हे जे वाईट गोष्टी आहेत त्यांच्याकडे लक्ष देतो असं त्यांचं म्हणणं. तर पण चांगलं बघणार. आता त्यांचं खूप पूर्वीपासून असं सगळ्यांचं म्हणणं आहे की आपण चांगलं बघायची सवय लावली पाहिजे, की आपण चांगलं बघतच नाही, आपल्याला वाईटच बघण्याची सवय लागलेली आहे. आणि त्याच्यामुळे वी लाईक डेलिबरेटली गो सर्चिंग फॉर द रॉंग अँड द वर्स्ट न्यूज, वी बिलीव्ह इन इट अँड वी पॉसिबली आर नॉट, वी आर फिक्सेटेड ऑन इट, वी आर नॉट मूव्हिंग बियॉन्ड इट. So how serious is the matter? What exactly is it that one should be thinking about when one is thinking about this? कारण जसं महर्षी has said की there's nothing new about this. This has been happening in India for quite some period of time. It's almost sort of ingrained in a certain way as far as this country is concerned, and we are needlessly getting bothered about it. And ये पूरा एक किस्म का एक social media phenomena है. People who are the enemies of this nation, ज्याला पूर्वी invisible outside powers असं म्हटलं जायचं, are who are trying to stoke these problems. Okay. There's the second school of thought which says that if under Modi the BJP has been in power for just the last 3 years of the 70 in which India has been a free country, तो तुम्ही त्या फक्त 3 वर्षांमध्ये काय झालं याच्याकडे कसं काय बघू शकता? तुम्ही त्याच्या आधीची जी काही 67 years होऊन गेलेली आहे, why don't you want to focus on that? You had hundreds of people being killed at that point of time in almost similar sorts of situations. And that was equally gruesome. So फक्त या 3 वर्षाच्या केसेस, आता त्याच्यावरती एक जी नवीन चीज आहे is a national commission, the National Crime Records Bureau has finally decided to keep a count of lynching, something which was not done till date. की त्यांच्याकडे सगळ्या वेगवेगळ्या कॅटेगरीज ऑफ क्राईम आणि क्रिमिनॅलिटी आहे, त्याच्यामध्ये लिंचिंग वॉज नेव्हर कवर्ड. So now they have decided that they are going to cover it, and now they have decided that they are going to provide adequate data from the different states and regions of India, so that there can be current, for that matter of fact, you can't debate or argue about anything in the absence of good data. So if you don't have data about this, easy idea, it has been happening for centuries, so it has been happening in the last 67 years, it's not just that it has happened in the last 3 years. So these types of things can't be countered until and unless you don't have good data for it. So now the idea is, it's high time that, well, if you have a crime of this time being committed, it's high time that we start gathering data about it, कि हो क्या रहा है, कौन लोग हैं जो ये कर रहे हैं, और exactly किस किस्म का phenomena है. It's quite scary if you are a victim of it. If it at all happens that you are in the middle of a situation wherein somebody in the mob decides that something that you have done, something that you have said, something that you, in the Junaid Khan case, something that you are. So it's not just that तुम्ही काय बोललाय, तुम्ही काय म्हणताय, तो तुम्ही काय आहात, आणि तुम्ही काय आहात in the sense that त्यांना काय वाटते तुम्ही काय आहात. So if a mob sort of gathers around you and finds that there is something objectionable about something that you are saying, doing, who you are, it's quite scary. It's deadly scary. म्हणजे when you are not a victim of it, when you are not in the center of it, when you are not the center of this sort of an attention by a mob, it's a different story altogether. म्हणजे आपल्याला कुठलं तरी एखादं सोशल मीडिया फॉरवर्ड येणं, ते आपण वाचणं, ते आपण लाईक डिसलाईक त्याच्यावरती कमेंट करणं, ही एक निराळी गोष्ट आहे. This is a completely different matter altogether. But if you are caught in the middle of it, okay, and just try thinking of this subjectively at your own ends, कि forget a mob. A mob is a large thing. A mob is something that is the very fact that we use a word called as mob for it, there's something uncountable about it. So I can't count how many people is it that have surrounded me. So there's something uncountable about that. But just think in your own mind कि बाबा असं काहीतरी आहे कि which possibly somebody doesn't like, and I've done it, and maybe it's not a mob, it's just 7 people, 8 people, 6 people. How do you face up to that? म्हणजे जर एक 5-6 लोक असतील की ज्यांना आपण काय आहोत, आपण काय बोलतोय, आपण काय करतोय हे पसंत पडत नाही, आणि they decide to confront you about it. So what sort of a sense, what sort of feelings, what sort of emotions, passions, fears does it arouse within you? Okay, and then you go about multiplying this and making it uncountable to realize as to if you are at the center of that sort of attention, how seriously problematic it can be. Okay, so of course, I don't want to get into what the Frontline has done for a simple reason, because I don't know तुमच्यापैकी किती लोकांनी पूर्वी when I've done this have been here. I've time and again said the Frontline, being the sort of publication that it is, has a certain sort of vested interest. म्हणजे Frontline वर्षामध्ये कमीत कमी 2 अंक असे करतं की याच्यामध्ये Frontline sort of keeps a tab on how close to becoming a Hindu Rashtra have we finally come to. So there are 2 issues, at least minimum of 2 issues every year, and they go about covering exactly the same stories that these stories are covering. So they'll do it in the realm of education, they'll do it in the realm of organizations, associations, different sorts of social events and phenomena. So they keep a track of this twice every year. Of course, still date तो ऐसा हुआ नहीं है, पण त्यांचं म्हणणं आहे की जरी ऑफिशियली हिंदू राष्ट्र घोषित झालेलं नसलं तरी देखील with the sort of activities which are happening around you, you are very close to that. Even if it is not, म्हणजे ती आता एक sort of formality राहिली, it has not been declared. But beyond that, if you look most importantly, and in this case of lynching, at the attitude of state institutions, most importantly the police and the judiciary. तो ह्या ज्या 2 institutions आहेत यांच्या जर तुम्ही attitudes कडे बघितलं ना, number of cases which have happened in the recent past, the most surprising and most shocking thing is the police were a witness to it. So you either have the police close by in the vicinity, you have cases happening close by where the police are, where police तिथं असतात आणि तरी देखील police काही करत नाहीत, and most of the time the police approach as is duly recorded is हम लोग क्या कर सकते थे, we were barely 15 or 20 and the mob टोला जो था वो 20,000 का था, 2,000 का था, 40,000 का था, हम लोग क्या कर सकते थे. So like 15 or 20 of us, how could we have faced up to this? Of course, this calls into question a whole plethora of issues. म्हणजे सदरील व्यक्ती पोलीस बनण्याच्या आधीची जी काय अख्खी प्रक्रिया आहे, ती प्रक्रियाच मुळात ह्या ॲटिट्यूडमधनं क्वेश्चन होते की ज्यावेळेला तुम्ही असं म्हणता की आम्ही 15 ते 20 जण होतो, ते 20,000 जण होते किंवा 2,000 जण होते. हाऊ आर वी सपोज टू फेस अप टू दॅट? सो व्हॉट वर यू ट्रेन्ड ॲज? When you were trained, what was the sense that was inculcated in you that you are becoming a police? What were you exactly supposed to become? If you feel that after becoming a police, someone who sort of uses validated state authority, you are incapable of facing up to a mob of 2,000. So जो आपका पूरा ट्रेनिंग का प्रोसेस है, उसमें जो सेंस आप में इनकलकेट किया गया है, वो एग्जैक्टली किस किस्म का सेंस है, स्पेशली व्हेन इट कम्स टू व्हाट हैव यू लर्नड अबाउट द स्टेट एज सच. Okay, so it automatically creates all these different types of issues at multiple levels in terms of what exactly is it that is happening, what exactly is it that is going on as far as all of this is concerned. But when it comes, most of these cases rarely reach closure as far as the courts are concerned. म्हणजे ज्यावेळेला त्या घडतात त्यावेळेला they would be talked about, ज्यावेळेला त्या घडतात त्यावेळेला they would be there quite well focused on. But after a period of time, when it comes to the judicial proceedings, there is hardly any media focus. म्हणजे ज्या उत्सुकतेने media and civil society through media go about discussing matters when the case has happened, well, that's a different story as compared to when it comes to the judicial proceedings as far as the matter is concerned. म्हणजे judicial proceedings च्या वेळेला you will hardly hear anything about it. We don't know as to what has happened about so many of these cases. Okay, the judiciary has a tardy approach. It takes its own sweet time. Rarely is there a closure as far as most of these cases are concerned. So at the end of the day, if somebody, it's a very simple case. I don't want to make it sound that blunt and bad, but to a certain extent it's true. As some people in the BJP would always point out, had 1984 been adequately punished, possibly 2002 would never have happened. अब ये गलत है, वी डू अंडरस्टैंड दिस, दैट ये इस किस्म का जो कंपैरिजन है, ये कंपैरिजन इन इट्स वेरी फंडामेंटल्स इज रॉन्ग. ओके, सो I too would go one step ahead of it and always insist on this, that had 1984 been adequately punished, फिर भी 2002 हुआ होता. शायद वो 2002 में नहीं होता, 2003 या 4 में होता, शायद वो उधर नहीं होता जिधर हुआ, कहीं और होता, पर हो के रहता. So I don't buy this argument कि, well, it's an argument that sort of is supposed to be a showstopper when it says that 1984 में जिस किस्म का riot दिल्ली में हुआ against the Sikh, okay, so and त्याच्यानंतर the sort of judicial processes that this country witnessed, you had people who died without any judicial closure being brought to their cases. No judicial closure ever brought to them. People safely died off, never punished for anything. Okay, of course we have a long list of such people. For example, it's not just about 1984, 1992 riots and Bal Thackeray's role in it. तो my simple submission is की असं काही नाही आहे की 1984 मध्ये लोकांना पनिश केलं गेलं नाही आणि त्यांच्यावरती कारवाई झाली नाही म्हणून 2002 झालं ज्या पद्धतीने झालं. तर माझं म्हणणं असं काही नाही आहे. 2002 एनिवे झालं असतं, ते होणारच होतं. So असं काहीच, I don't want to draw that sort of equivocation about it, but the point is well taken in the sense that the dispensation of justice in this country is intensely political. It depends on what sort of a judge do you have, what sort of immediate politics does he have that he has got to address, what sort of a long-term politics does he have that he has got to address. But inevitably the dispensation of justice in this country is intensely political. Nobody can deny that. Okay, matlab to believe in this, that we have an independent judiciary in the sense that it is not influenced by the political currents of the day when it is deciding cases, I think it's like living in a fool's paradise. अशी अपेक्षा करणं की नाही, असं ते लोक बोलतात ना की नाही काही जरी झालं तरी न्यायव्यवस्था आहे ना, न्यायव्यवस्था न्याय करेल ना आणि न्यायव्यवस्था काहीतरी करेल, तो अशी अपेक्षा करणं हेच मुळात चुकीचं आहे. तर माझं असं म्हणणं आहे की जर आपण भारतात राहत असू, जर आपण आपल्या आसपासच्या गोष्टी बघत असू आणि जर आपण त्याच्यानंतर देखील न्यायपालिकेवरती विश्वास ठेवत असू तर हा न्यायपालिकेचा कुठलाही मोठेपणा नाही आहे, ही आपली एक इच्छा आहे की जी एका अर्थाने आतापर्यंत पूर्ण झालेली नाही आहे, विच वी आर सीकिंग सम सॉर्ट ऑफ रिडेम्पशन इन द फ्युचर. The justice system has never delivered itself. Because we sort of have a very wrong sort of an idea as to how exactly does justice play out in this place. In a situation wherein the executive and the legislature have a vested interest in appointing judges, influencing the course of their careers, both while in office as well as beyond office, to believe in this, that justice is going to be in some sort of a way a completely independent sort of an activity, I seriously don't believe in that. ओके सो एंड ये सिंपल सा मामला है. अगर ये जो इंस्टीट्यूशंस हैं जिन्होंने इस चीज़ को एड्रेस करना है, अगर ये इस बात को एड्रेस नहीं करेंगी तो आप भूल जाओ कि देयर इज गोइंग टू बी समबडी एल्स हु इज गोइंग टू टेक चार्ज ऑफ द एंटायर सिचुएशन एंड एड्रेस मैटर्स एंड सेट देम राइट. ओके, there are two things, as I said, which as people who are aspiring for the civil services you have got to be very clear about, and both of these things are what you have got to be clear about even if you are not aspiring for the civil services. So the first thing is, as lay citizens you have got to be concerned about this, that living in a country which is marked by a phenomenal amount of diversity, wherein possibly not many people in this country are like you have got to be always worried about this as to what would happen if something done by you becomes the center of that sort of an mob attention. आणि काही पण घडू शकतं, काहीही, म्हणजे काय घडेल याचा कसलाही नेम देता येत नाही. म्हणजे आत्ता जर तुम्ही, इफ यू हॅव बीन रीडिंग युअर न्यूजपेपर्स रिसेंटली, यू माइट हॅव हर्ड ऑफ दिस व्हेरी इंटरेस्टिंग केस जिथं गोखलेनगरला घडली की ती बाई दुपारी झोपलेली असताना तिचं मांजर त्या शेजारच्या घरात गेलं, त्याच्यावरनं भांडण सुरू झालं आणि शेजाऱ्यांनी त्याला ऑब्जेक्शन करती याच्यावरनं तिचा मुर्दा पाडलेला आहे. सो कोण कुणाला कशावरनं मारू शकतं ह्याचा कुठलाही नेम राहिलेला नाही. And anyone, for any reason, as I said, any action of yours, any articulation of yours, the very presence of yours might be deemed objectionable for any reason whatsoever. So as living citizens of this country who intend to live for a long time, the very first line where you have got to be worried is precisely that, कि अगर मेरे बारे में ऐसा हुआ तो ये कैसे होगा. ओके, म्हणून सावधपणे पुढच्या वेळेला ज्यावेळेला असल्या सगळ्या प्रकारच्या आपल्याला फॉरवर्ड्स येतात तर त्यांचा काय हिशोब लावायचा याचा आपण विचार करा. ओके, आता वाय इज दिस हॅपनिंग, तर देर आर मल्टिपल रिझन्स फॉर इट. वन ऑफ द मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टंट रिझन्स वेअर पीपल आर ट्राइड सिच्युएटिंग इट इन, एज आय सेड, द फर्स्ट इज द ज्युडिशियल वन, की बाबा द राईट वे टू अड्रेस दिस प्रॉब्लेम इज टू अपहोल्ड समथिंग कॉल्ड एज रूल ऑफ लॉ. But if people who are supposed to uphold this rule of law, starting off from your beat constable to the judge who would deliver justice in this case, if all of them are not serious about it, if all of them are not in a certain way adequately sensitized about this, then how does rule of law pan out is one big issue that one has got to address. Okay, so एक तर खूप clear है, मैं lynching violates Article 21 of the Indian Constitution, and Article 21 of the Indian Constitution after 1978 is an inviolable aspect of the Constitution. In no condition, even in the worst of conditions post 1978, Article 21 cannot be suspended. Okay, lynching violates Article 21 because what lynching does is it takes away what is called as your life and liberty, most important your life, without recourse to anything that is called as due process. So there is no due process which is conducted. Lynching essentially is an act whereby a group of people come together to decide that तुम्ही काहीतरी केलेलं आहे, तुम्ही काहीतरी केलेलं आहे, तुम्ही काहीतरी बोललेलं आहे, तुम्ही काहीतरी वागलेलं आहे किंवा तुम्ही काहीतरी आहे आणि आम्हाला ह्याचा प्रॉब्लेम आहे आणि आता आम्ही ह्याच्यासाठी पोलीस बिलीसमध्ये जाण्याचा प्रॉब्लेम करणार नाही. म्हणजे आपल्याला असं जर वाटलं की बाबा तिची मांजर तिचं घर सोडून माझ्या घरात आली तर पोलीसकडे जावं, पोलिसला सांगावं, तर तसं आम्हाला करायचं नाही. आम्ही आता तुमचा हिशोब आमच्याच लेवलला करणार. ओके, सो व्हॉट वी वॉन्ट टू डू इज वी वॉन्ट टू डील विथ यू ॲट आवर ओन लेवल. And what most of the time that does is there's an unleashing of a certain sort of mob frenzy. Okay, now in that mob frenzy, the first most important thing that has overtaken the mob is a certain sort of fear about the individual. कि ये जो बंदा है जिसको हमने सराउंड किया है और जिसके बारे में हम कुछ करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, तो उसके बारे में एक इरैशनल किस्म का फियर है. अब ये बहुत ही एक तरह से वियर्ड सिच्युएशन है की तो एकटाय तुम्ही 2000 लोक आहे आणि तरी देखील तुम्हाला त्या एकट्या माणसाची भीती आहे की हे लोक असेच असतात, ह्यांचे पाकिस्तानमध्ये पाठराखे असतात. ऍक्च्युअली ना दिस इज समथिंग दॅट forget. Let's keep Junaid and all of them side for some time and let's think of something completely different. I don't know how many of you have heard of this. One of the oldest lynchings on the Indian landscape is what is called as witch hunting. You might have heard of words like Dakan, Dayan or something like that. These women across the Indian, and this happens throughout the country, throughout. There is not a single part of the country कि जिधर ये नहीं होता है. Most of the time these are women who are mostly all by themselves, in the sense that त्यांना काही adequate अशा प्रकारचे फॅमिली किंवा इतर सपोर्ट स्ट्रक्चर्स नसतात. आणि एक एकदम इरैशनल किस्म का डर है इस औरत के बारे में कि ये औरत डाकन है. And the word that we use in English is that she's a witch. And she needs to be set right for the sort of activities that she does. And it starts off again with those same sort of activities. की कुणाचं तरी मूल मेलेलं आहे, कुणाच्या तरी बकऱ्या मेलेल्या आहे, कुणाच्या तरी घरामध्ये काहीतरी सापडलेलं आहे आणि हे का घडलेलं आहे ह्याची कसलीही तर्कसंगत अशा प्रकारची मीमांसा करायची नाही. किंवा आपलं मूल मेलं तर आपलं मूल का मेलं, वॉज देअर एनी प्रॉब्लेम ॲट द एंड ऑफ युअर पेरेंटिंग द चाइल्ड. So you don't go into that. What you do is you identify a woman in the village that, well, if my child is dead, she is responsible for it. She might be childless, she might be old, she might be someone who is living all by herself. Most of the time, the women who are identified as this fall into these types of categories. They are either old, they're eccentric, they're quite eccentric in their own ways. They have their own attitude towards life and living. There are a whole range of cases in which they are very brash about it. कि वो अकेली है, उसको जिन स्थितियों ने घेरा है उसमें some other woman would be dead, but she gives a damn to the situation and carries on with life and living. She's not worried about this, that people cast aspersions on her reputation, on her chastity and all of that. And then at the end of the day, as things start gathering up, एक केस हो जाएगा, दूसरा केस हो जाएगा, तीसरा केस हो जाएगा, धीरे धीरे जैसे ऐसा एक माहौल बढ़ता जाएगा वैसे इट वुड बी डिसाइडेड दैट शी नीड्स टू बी डेल्ट विद. एंड डीलिंग विथ हर इसेंशियली विल स्टार्ट ऑफ विथ ह्यूमिलिएटिंग हर, डिग्रेडिंग हर. एग्जैक्टली जो जुनैद की केस में हुआ था ना, वो सब कुछ उसके साथ होता है. So they start humiliating her, they start denigrating her, they might hurl abuses at her, they might hit and punch her. And then at a certain point of time, it's decided that the only thing that can be done with her is you have got to kill her. Because there's just no way by which this sense of insecurity कि गांव में इतनी सारी चीज़ें हो रही हैं और इन सारी चीज़ों के लिए औरत जिम्मेदार है, and we are letting a Dakan live in our middle and we have got to do something about her. So killing women in this manner across time and spaces in India is the oldest form of lynching which is present on the landscape. Oldest. Rarely talked about, never taken any action about. Karan, most of the time, if she's a lone woman all by herself and she's dead, who exactly is going to file a case on her behalf? मतलब एक औरत मरी है, बात सही है, पर इसके बिहाफ पे केस कौन फाइल करेगा? अच्छा, उसके मरने के बाद गांव is going to create a picture to show this that, well, we are not responsible for it. पाय घसरला पडून मेली, काय नाही काय मला. When most mob lynching cases across rural India, जिथं अख्ख्या गावांनी सहभागी होऊन एखाद्याचा काटा काढलेला आहे, तिथं त्या अख्ख्या गावातला एक माणूस पण पुढे यायला असा कधीच तयार होत नाही की नाही तिला आम्ही मारलेली आहे. It's superstitious. It's not just pre-modern, it's completely anti-modern. It has got nothing to do with rule of law. This is like we are trying to appropriate law at our own end. It's rampant. I mean, if you look at feminist organizations and the amount of data that they have collected about this, it would be amazing. It happens even now in 2017, which, as most people in India have a delusion about, is the time when we are living in the highest moment of our modernity. So ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है. At this highest moment of your modernity, it's happening right around. Jidhar the village has not mustered courage enough to kill her, she's there. But ostracizing, discriminating, excluding, वो सब चलता है. खाली एक चीज जो नहीं हुआ है is that ultimate thing of killing her has not happened. When there are women across, you travel into India's villages, you would even today come across these women who are marked in a certain way. की ह्या गावातल्या त्या अशा बायका असतात, ते तुम्हाला बरोबर, तुम्ही जर त्यांच्या जवळ गेले, तुम्ही जर त्यांना व्यवस्थितपणे सांगितलं तर ते तुम्हाला बरोबर सांगतात. So there's a stupid Marathi film which is presently in the theaters. I don't know. I don't see Marathi films. They are bad. They are gorgeously bad. आणि त्याच्यात काय बघण्यासारखं नसतं. त्यांना काय ते 25 लाख रुपये मिळायचे असतात म्हणून ते पिक्चर बनवतात. त्याच्यात त्यांना काय घेणं देणं नसतं. पण देर इज अ फिल्म अबाउट दिस विच इज प्रेझेंटली गोइंग ऑन, की त्याच्यामध्ये ती बाई जी आहे इज सपोज टू बी सम सॉर्ट ऑफ अ कॅरेक्टर. बरं, या सगळ्या केसेस पॉईंट आउट अशा पद्धतीने. आता तर इन अ नंबर ऑफ केसेस द न्यू मोड इन टाउन इज, earlier the witch was battered by the men of the village. Now the new trend in town is she is battered by the women of the village. So she is not killed by the men of the village. She is sort of killed in a manner wherein the mob provokes the women of the village to go ahead and kill her. ह्या बायकांबद्दल काही बोललं जात नाही. They come from all manner of castes, communities, tribal groups. But yeah, they are not the sort of thing that ever has been organized. Poor, illiterate, unlettered women are not women who have ever managed to aggregate a political constituency around themselves. Okay, they are like subjects of what is called as the state's condescension. आणि ते पण हल्लीच्या काळामध्ये तर ते पण condescending हे भाडोत्री आहे. In the sense that तुम्ही शहरामध्ये तुमची गॅसची सबसिडी द्या, म्हणजे गावामध्ये एखाद्या बाईला चूल बंद करून गॅसवरती स्वयंपाक करता येईल. ते हे सगळं असतंय. तू तुझ्या खिशातनं देतो का? ते माझ्या खिशात काहीच नाहीये. माझा खिसा अंबानीचा खिसा आहे. माझ्या खिशात कुठलं काय असायला? माझ्या खिशात काही नाही. तुम्ही द्या म्हणजे त्यांना मिळेल. डायरेक्ट टॅक्स कोड मध्ये काहीतरी करून आपण अंबानी, अडानी यांच्याकडनं जास्त पैसे वसूल करूयात का? तसं नाही. आपण त्याच्यापेक्षा काय करूयात, रात्री 12 वाजता संसदेत जाऊयात, घंटा वाजवूयात आणि जीएसटी आणून तुमच्या सगळ्यांची घंटा वाजवू. दॅट इज मच बेटर. आता तिथं मुळातच आयडिया अशी आहे की ती गरीब बिचारी बाई मरते, तिच्याकडे कोण मागणार आहे? These are not women who have ever managed to aggregate a political constituency around them. So that they keep on dying every day. Achha, in cases where they are not physically dead, but living in that sort of a closed world where you are permanently excluded, permanently denigrated, permanently abused, is death enough of a different type? So would you address anything of this? No. Because most of this, the reason why most of this is not addressed is precisely because most of this is also rooted in a certain public belief and practice of religion. मैं एक डाकन आता किधर से आइडिया है? ये आपका कोई तो भी एक रिलीजियस आइडिया है ना, ये ऐसे हवा से नहीं आता है. And anything religious in this country is not supposed to be addressed fair, square and openly, no. Everything that is religious is supposed to be more or less pandered in as foolish a way as is possible. मैं 18,000 स्क्वेअर फूट वरती चढून काय करायचं तर दर्शनाला, काय कशाच्या दर्शनाला जायचंय तर hopelessness of the highest order. It's a stalagmite formation. There's nothing to it. It's a natural phenomena. It's a stalagmite formation है वो, कुछ नहीं है वो. And like all stalagmite formations, it depends on how does the water drip in. That's all. आपण एवढे बावळट असू शकतो. And it exists on that continuum. One sort of insanity and frenzy feeds into another form of insanity and frenzy. So women keep getting killed all over the place. People are least worried about it. हे ह्याचं पण असंच होणार आहे. आफ्टर पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम यू आर गोइंग टू लूज फोकस ऑन इट. नो मोर ये नॉट इन माई नेम एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट. हाउ मेनी टाइम्स आर गोइंग टू डू इट? They never did that when it came to women killed in India in terms of being branded as witches. ये कब तक चलेगा? हाँ, वो witches का एक प्रॉब्लम क्या है? Witches get killed in rural, far-flung, mountainous hamlets. Not in my name is important because people like the Junaid Khans of the world die in metropolitan urban areas and at times in such modern fantasies of our life as metros. Junaid Khan died on a metro station. तो अर्बन में मेट्रो में मर रहा है, उसका हमको प्रॉब्लम है. ये दूर दराज के इलाकों में, गांव देहातों में, इन सम माउंटेन फास्टनेस समवेयर शी इज डेड. व्हाट द हेल हैव वी गॉट टू डू विद इट? उधर तक थोड़ी अर्नब गोस्वामी पहुंचता है. अर्नब गोस्वामी जिधर तक पहुंचता है दैट इज नेशनल कंसर्न. Arnab Goswami rarely steps beyond the confines of any city in India. So women are dying in mountain fastnesses and remote far off villages and tribal hamlets. मतलब काय घेऊन बसले? And not even worth talking about. आ रहा है? So वो सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है. दूसरा चीज जो है, आता त्याच्यामध्ये there is no issue about it. There is no reason why you should sort of shy away from calling a spade a spade. This is about the most vulnerable sections of your population. कि be it places like ऊना वाला हो या ये जुनैद का केस हो, मोहम्मद अखलाक का केस हो, या वो जो मामा भतीजे थे झारखंड वाले लटेयर वाले उनका केस हो, तो पहलू खान का अलवर वाला केस हो. So now there is no shying, there is no reason why one should shy away from the fact that Indian nationalism as informs a certain sort of mob frenzy doesn't believe that there are certain types of people who are good enough to be called as Indians, and they include all of these, the Una Dalits, the Saharanpur Dalits, all these categories. हे असली लोक जी काही आहेत हे भारतीय नसतात. So there's a persistent sort of formation of what does it mean to be an Indian, who is an Indian, okay, in this time and age. And if you don't fall within that, then there's no reason why one should be worried about this कि तुम जी रहे हो या तुम मर रहे हो. तो ऐसे वाले लोग जो है वो एक तरह से डिस्पेंसेबल है. ये लोग जिए या ये लोग मरे, इससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. Okay, so that's the second big problem that one has got to be worried about, that it's shaping a certain sort of a discourse of what does it mean to be an Indian national, who is an Indian national. And in this discourse which is getting shaped up, unfortunately enough, even the not in my name wala crowd is sort of implicit in this. The worst problem that is happening, what we are demanding is it shouldn't happen in my name. We are not demanding that it should stop. We are not demanding that the full force of the law be brought upon people who are doing this. We are not demanding that there should be an urgency in addressing these matters in law. All that we are demanding is कि तुमको जो भी करना है ना भाई आप कीजिए, पर मेरे नाम से मत कीजिए. हाँ, तो एक तरह से ये कहना कि मेरे नाम से इसको मत कीजिए is perpetrating the same action from the opposite side by denying these victims of all these cases the sort of equality that needs to be extended to them. When you say that you belong to the same nation, what it fundamentally means is irrespective of तुम कौन हो क्या हो, तुम मेरे नेशन का हिस्सा हो, जिसका सीधा मतलब ये है कि you are equal to me. Maybe I won't practice that equality with you in the confines of my house, but the minute I step out of my threshold and we move into a larger public space, that equality is not a sort of favor that I do to you. It's your right. But when you come up with these types of formulations, it was good. In a way, it was good. Nobody's denying that. In the sense that over a long period of time, not in my name happened, I don't know what, one and a half year after that Kanhaiya Kumar wala Azadi ka speech. Something like that. So बीच में वो जो एक मीडिया को जिस किस्म के एक विजिबल एक्शन रिएक्शन में इंटरेस्ट है, वैसा वाला कुछ हुआ नहीं था. That's the reason why not in my name sort of got talked up a lot.
And in a way it was good that people did come out, crowd out, did do the sort of stuff that they did. But उसके बाद वो जो immediate question होता है ना, okay this has been done, what next? तो उसमें प्रॉब्लम ये है कि तुम्हारा इनिशियल प्रीमाइस इटसेल्फ गलत है कि जब आप ये कह रहे हो कि देखिए आपको जो करना है ना वो आप कीजिए, पर मेरे नाम से मत कीजिए. तो all of this, all this exclusion, this discrimination, this denigration, all of this can go ahead. The only point is don't let it happen in mind. आणि त्याच्याही पुढची स्टेप म्हणजे जी सगळ्यात शॉकिंग होती, काय करायचं ते करा पण तुम्ही ना कोणाला मारू नका. मैं ऑन एन एवरेज इंडियन मिडिल क्लास जो शहरों में रहता है, शाम को जाके अर्नब गोस्वामी, उदय निर्गुड़कर जैसी यूजलेस चीज़ों को देखता है, उसका पॉइंट ये है कि देखिए भाई जो भी करना है आप कीजिए, पर आप किसी को मारिए मत. You shouldn't kill somebody. Because killing is not what people like us do. Killing is what the Chinese do. Killing is what the Pakistanis do. Killing is what they do. We are not supposed to kill. Killing, in this case, what I mean by killing is an instantaneous death which is delivered to someone. धीरे धीरे कोई मर रहा है वो अलग बात है. You live next to slums. You live next to places which have been turned into slums. Muslims in Gujarat, wherein Muslim locations across Gujarat since 2002 have got this unusual sort of a development as far as the public spaces around them are concerned. They have steadily had public spaces around them designated as slums, or these places where urban garbage can be dumped out. ये रूटीन है. तो उससे कोई मर रहा है, that's fine. Instantaneous death shouldn't happen. Instantaneous killing shouldn't be delivered. That doesn't look good. That creates a problem of self-perception for us. That makes us feel that we are possibly like the Pakistanis. Are we like the Pakistanis? We are not. मग आपला अख्खा प्रिमाइसच बिल्टअप या गोष्टीवरती ना की आपण पाकिस्तान्यांसारखे नाहीये, मग आपण पाकिस्तान्यांसारखं कशाला वागलं पाहिजे. तर तुम्ही असं कोणाला तरी एकदम मारू नका. आपण असं करूयात ना, त्यांच्या आसपासच्या एरियाला झोपडपट्टी ठरवूयात, ते डम्पिंग ग्राउंड ठरवूयात, ते हळूहळू मरतील, हळूहळू मरतील. आपण एकदम मारायला. हाँ, तो वो सेकेंड इशू जो है ना वो इक्वालिटी और नेशनलिज्म का है. वो बेसिक क्वेश्चन इज अबाउट द आइडेंटिटी ऑफ दीज पीपल. You talk about this. They are Muslims, they are Dalits, they are everything. No one is making a point about this, that fellow Indians have been meted out a certain sort of justice which in the first place should not exist in any civilized society which is ruled by law. ना इतका एवढा सिंपल पॉइंट है. Have you heard anybody make that point? We understand this. The reason why they have been targeted is, as I said, कि they have been targeted. ये ऐसा वाला जो एक हाइपर इंसेंसिटिव इंसैनिटी का केस है ना, ये किसी में भी कोई भी चीज ढूंढते जा सकता है. म्हणजे तो त्याला आज दलित म्हणून मारतो, तो त्याला मुस्लिम म्हणून मारतो, मे बी उद्या तो तुमच्यामध्ये पण काहीतरी असं शोधू शकतो. इट विल फाइंड समथिंग इन यू विच इट डजंट लाइक. मग तुम्ही काय करणार? And what the mob doesn't like at that point of time is your identity. You can't make this point that no, but you know I am a Hindu. No, आप भाड़ में जाओ. काय के हिंदू? आप बैंगलोर में हो, हिंदी में बात कर रहे हो, आप कन्नड़ में बात नहीं कर रहे हो. You need to be bashed up. There you can't make this point. No, but then I am a Hindu like you are a Hindu. Are you gone mad? At this point of time, you are a non-Kannada speaking soul. Period. बाकी सब है तेल लेंगे. The reason why we are as of now bashing you up is because you are a non-Kannada speaking soul. The soul doesn't speak Kannada, needs to be bashed. उस वक्त ये नहीं ना कह सकते हो नहीं पर आप भी हिंदू हो भाई, हम भी हिंदू है. तो वो आप में क्या ढूंढेगा जो उसको पसंद नहीं आएगा? इसका कोई इम्कान नहीं है. उसको कुछ भी पसंद नहीं आ सकता. Are you getting it? It's quite troublesome. Be worried about it. Be seriously worried about it. Actually, it has, as some of these people have made an argument, a flip side to it in the sense that there's something economic about it. And we had started making a point about that in one of the last, in one of these things that we were talking about in the last class, but maybe I'll come back to that at some point of time. उसका एक इकोनॉमिक एस्पेक्ट ऐसा है कि the reasons why you find these mobs of young men across the country who are ready to take offense at the drop of a hat is because the Indian economy, especially the macro economy, is not performing well. कि एक well performing economy का sign क्या होता है? Young men in the age groups of that 14 to 65 wala, which is close to 66% of the population of 1.3 billion people in this country, and more than 50% of them are men. तो वो लोग जो है ना, वो जिस तरह से एक वेल पेड फुल टेन्योर्ड जॉब में इन्वॉल्व होने चाहिए, वो उस तरह से उन जॉब्स में इन्वॉल्व नहीं है. हाँ, interestingly enough, in most of the cases, if you look at them, they're very interesting in the sense that these are men who are roaming around with the latest gadgets, with the latest modes of communication. मतलब उसके साथ कुछ एक पंगा एक जगह पे हो जाता है, वो किसी को फोन करता है, किसी को मैसेज भेजता है, maybe in the next couple of minutes you're going to have a whole army of 100-200 people delivered over there. तो वैसे तो देश का विकास हो रहा है कि रास्ते बन रहे हैं कि जिससे whole mob of 100-200 people can gather in a place. हाँ, if you remember about 2002 का गुजरात riots, I've always said that 2002 happened in a situation where Gujarat is a developed state. And Gujarat का development का सीधा मतलब क्या है? We had good roads. So if you have good roads, just as you have the transportation of goods and services on it, the movement of people and pilgrims on it, you also have the speedier and faster movement of armies and rioters on it. So one of the reasons why in pre-modern times good roads were necessary is for purpose of war. So one of the reasons why this is happening, दोनशे साधा प्रॉब्लेम असतो. तुम्ही असा उलटा विचार करून बघा ना की if you are in places like IT parks in places like Pune, Gurgaon, Noida, Bangalore, I feel like 100-200 men who are working at a workstation. तुम्हाला किती पण सांगू दे की खालच्या पार्किंग मध्ये गाय मारताय, तरी पण आपण आपल्या जागेवरनं हलणार नाही. मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम आपण आपल्या जागेवरनं हलणार अशासाठी नाहीये कारण इथे एसी आहे, पार्किंग मध्ये एसी नसतो. त्यामुळे ते गाय मारू देत नाही तर काही पण करू देत, मी इथं हलणार ना. सो इट्स इसेन्शियली अ फंक्शन ऑफ men who are not working, men who are not what can be called as fully employed, gainfully employed, who are seeking a certain sort of meaning in the activities in which they are involving themselves. So ये जो हम कर रहे हैं ना कि जिसमें जुनैद मर रहा है, पहलू मर रहा है, किसी किस्म का मोहम्मद मर रहा है, मरने तो कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. We are gainfully employed. To take this argument slightly further in the Indian context, I don't know how many of you remember it when I had said this in May 2014, when the elections had happened. We had a special Frontline session after that, and I had said it in so many words. Modi's biggest challenge is to avoid the formation of Modi clones across the country. And after 3 years, I can safely vouch for this. In this biggest challenge that he had, he has miserably failed. आणि त्यांनी किती प्रयत्न करू ते ह्याच्यात यशस्वीच होऊ शकत नाही. कारण सगळ्यात मेजर प्रॉब्लेम असा आहे, दे आर जस्ट नॉट एबल टू अंडरस्टँड दॅट दिस शुड नॉट हॅपन. द मोस्ट इम्पॉर्टंट फीचर ऑफ द सॉर्ट ऑफ लीडर दॅट ही प्रोजेक्ट्स हिमसेल्फ टू बी इज दॅट लाईक द Jewish God, he has got to be splendidly singular. There can not be a second. There can never be anybody like him. ना अब ना कल. That's the epitome of leadership. जिस किस्म का लीडरशिप वो प्रोजेक्ट कर रहा है, ये मैं नहीं कह रहा हूं, ये जिस किस्म का आप लीडरशिप प्रोजेक्ट कर रहे हो ना, उस किस्म के लीडरशिप में ये होना चाहिए कि आपकी लीडरशिप का वजूद कुछ ऐसा होना चाहिए कि मेरे जैसा कोई नहीं, मेरा कोई सानी नहीं है. I am all by myself. They made me and broke the mold. ना मेरे जैसा आज कोई है, ना मेरे जैसा कल कोई होगा. I'm a unique leader all by myself. And he just doesn't understand this. I had repeated the same point in June 2014 ke baad when Mohsin Sheikh was there, that the first thing that he has to do is he has to stand up and say no. क्योंकि जब ये चीजें, when these types of things keep repeating themselves, howsoever Modi tries to move away from 2002, inevitably Modi gets encapsulated in 2002. कि वो लाख कोशिश करे ये दिखाने की कि देखिए आई एम ए डेवलपमेंट मैन, आई हैव गॉट नथिंग टू डू विद द राइट्स ऑफ 2002. इफ यू हैव गॉट नथिंग टू डू विद द राइट्स ऑफ 2002, व्हाई आर यू टॉलरेटिंग दिस बुलशिट? पुट योर फुट डाउन, से नो. क्योंकि ये जो पुरुष है जो अलग अलग भारत के इलाकों में ये किस्म की एक्टिविटीज कर रहे हैं, ये इसेंशियली कल को जाके आप जैसा होने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. What they are trying to do is, आणि त्यांच्या डोक्यात हे इक्वेशन खूप क्लिअर आहे की फॉर दॅट सॉर्ट ऑफ मेल हु वुड गो आउट अँड किल ऑन इंस्टिंक्ट, पहलू खान, मोहम्मद अखलाक, जुनैद खान ऑफ द वर्ल्ड और दलित नमूना, त्याच्या उसके दिमाग में ये बहुत क्लियर है कि आप ऐसा कर सकते हो. यू स्टैंड बाय इट, यू डोंट यील्ड ग्राउंड. What happens next is you become chief minister for 12 years. After that you get to become the prime minister of this country. वो करने की कोशिश कर रहा है. वो बेरोजगार अनपढ़ इंसान है, वो स्कूल वूल नहीं गया है, तो वो ये बातें नहीं जानता है. These fine points of law and legislation, and he doesn't understand all of that. He has huge aspirations. The whole problem of the last 20 years has been the sort of economic system that we are faced up with. Those aspirations haven't found enough space for fruition. इच्छाएं तो हैं, उन इच्छाओं को फल नहीं आ रहा है. तो उसके दिमाग में the trajectory of his growth is clear. 4-5 cases of this type, go to the party, get a ticket, become an MLA, then start doing cases at the higher level. मुसीबत आज की तारीख में बस एक ही है, इस ट्रैजेक्टरी को, इस पैटर्न ऑफ डेवलपमेंट को अपने दिमाग में बड़ी गहराई से एक तरह से ऐसा रूट करके आसपास घूमने वाले ऐसे पुरुषों की संख्या अचानक से गए 3 सालों में बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ चुकी है. कुछ ज्यादा ही बढ़ी है. हाँ, in places they have, like in Saharanpur and all those places, they also have women to keep them company. So those different types of sadhvis and all of them that you get to see all over the place, when their numbers are high, and as gainful employment becomes difficult, these men, as elections keep drawing close, these men start becoming more vicious. Since 2014 I've been insisting on this. Modi has to stand up like a Jewish god. Insist on this. नहीं, जैसे इंदिरा गांधी ने किया था. इस पूरी सिस्टम में एक ही इंदिरा है. There are never going to be what are called as Indira clones all over the place. That's a different story. Indira clones evolved in the other parties across the regions, in terms of men and women who would be concerned about the future political prospects of their children. But Indira never allowed a Indira within the Congress. That was leadership. That's the reason why when Sagarika Ghosh says that she was India's strongest prime minister, most powerful prime minister, there's a point to that. You insist on this, the sort of leadership that I wield, no one else can. Dare do that and I'm going to slap you out. And sadly enough, the one thing that this man forgets, possibly doesn't understand, you have Modi clones evolving across the country. वो गांव से लेके शहरों तक, शहरों से लेके विधानसभाओं तक, विधानसभाओं से लेके लोकसभा तक, आज हर एक चीज के लिए एक तरह से आगे आने वाले उम्मीदवार हैं. आपकी टिकट का बेसिस ही वो है कि लास्ट टाइम जब फसाद हुआ था आप किधर थे, व्हाट वर यू डूइंग, एंड लो बिहोल्ड दे हैव बीन प्रूव्ड राइट. Look at the sort of MLAs that the BJP has got elected in Uttar Pradesh. You look at the sort of chief minister that Uttar Pradesh has. So men aspiring for that in Orissa, in Bengal, in Junaid's case in Haryana, गलत नहीं है ना अपनी जगह पे. उनको सीरियसली ऐसे लगता है कि ऐसा हो सकता है. जितना ज्यादा फसाद कराओगे उतनी ज्यादा पॉसिबिलिटी है कि आप अनचैलेंज तरीके से इस क्षेत्र से इस पार्टी के उम्मीदवार बनोगे. जीत के आएंगे नहीं आएंगे वो तो अलग बात है, उम्मीदवार तो बनेंगे आज की तारीख में. दैट्स द वर्स्ट चैलेंज. So it starts off as an economic problem when we have not been able, and they have, if you listen to people like Amit Shah, they have given up on this quest for what is called as meaningful jobs. Mr. Shah is very candid about this. In a country as big as 1.3 billion people, everyone cannot be employed. आप भूल जाओ कि आपको नौकरी मिलने वाली है, आप भूल जाओ कि ये आज की तारीख में सरकार की जिम्मेदारी है कि वो आपको नौकरी दिलवाने के लिए कुछ कोशिश करे. आप कुछ एक पहल अपनी तरफ से करो, हम आपको पैसा देंगे, आप बिजनेस शुरू कर दो. स्टार्टअप वाटअप फॉर बेटर थिंग्स, लुक एट स्टार्टअप्स इन द गोसेवा क्षेत्र which are proliferated like hell. They are all over the place. You have online startups, you have offline startups, and they are involved in so many things. Protecting the cow, researching on how cow urine can avoid nuclear radiation in the event of the third world war, which is going to be a nuclear war. Writing papers about it. अच्छा खासा पैसा है उसमें, आप ऐसा कुछ तो भी कीजिए. बाबा रामदेव बनिए, most entrepreneurial man. Devotion turned into a brand. The West knew of branding as devotion. Here we have an ulta case of devotion being turned into a brand. No? But you forget that the government of India can give you a job. The government of India has almost candidly admitted it. We are no longer in this business. It's not possible. It's beyond us. भारत भर के बाकी लोगों का बस एक ही प्रॉब्लम है. 2014 में हमने आपको इलेक्ट इस बात के लिए किया था. No, we didn't elect you for anything else. We elected you precisely for this because you promised us that with the sort of acumen for doing business that you have, on account of your being the Chief Minister of Gujarat for that longer time, you would turn the business cycle in a manner wherein it would result in gainful employment for everybody. हमको क्या मालूम था कि ये आगे जाके गाय बैठने वाली है ऑन द एकदम जो ये रोड जाता है ऑफ डेवलपमेंट टू गॉड नोज वेयर, going to have cows sitting right in the middle of it. As Anand Chaudhary says, NDA 2 is Congress plus cow. Nothing more than that. Same ideas of statism, not letting off controls, and not liberating. The Congress should have had in 10 years of power done something about what is called as reforms part 2. The Congress did nothing. उसका कहना ये है कि जिधर उन्होंने कुछ नहीं किया तो मुझसे किस बात की उम्मीद रखते हो, मैं तो कुछ भी नहीं कर सकता ना. A man who has a lawyer as a finance minister, come defense minister. Obviously, if lawyers go about designing tax systems, all taxpayers automatically become criminals. So why does the GST have a genetic code in it which assumes that the people of India paying taxes are criminals? मल्टीपल टैक्स ट्रेल्स, मल्टीपल ऑडिट ट्रेल्स, ये सब इनबिल्ट है उस सिस्टम में. उसका वजह ये है ना कि इफ यू हैव लॉयर्स हु एंड अप डिजाइनिंग टैक्स सिस्टम्स, तो टैक्स पेयर तो क्रिमिनल ही बनने वाला है, और क्या बनने वाला है, ये डिफॉल्ट है. आई डोंट नो. सो वो जो प्रॉब्लम है, इट स्टार्ट्स ऑफ विद दैट इकोनॉमिक थिंग, इट कीप्स ऑन एक्सेंचुएटिंग, हैज दिस पॉलिटिकल एंगल टू इट कि वी ऑल एस्पायर टू बी लाइक हिम. और ये ऐसे लोग हैं who in the last 20 years have never had a decent jab at anything that can be called even remotely as education. Remotely. एजुकेशन इन द फॉर्म ऑफ गैदरिंग इंफॉर्मेशन वो भी नहीं हुआ है. तो एजुकेशन इन द फॉर्म ऑफ सिंथेसाइजिंग एंड एनालाइजिंग इंफॉर्मेशन, उसको तो आप भूल ही जाओ. आ रहा है समझ में? ये सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम है. पता नहीं इसका क्या करने वाला है, सीरियसली पता नहीं. As I always have kept on insisting, he has to seriously put his foot down and insist on this. No leader like me, neither tomorrow nor today. He is happily letting these clones proliferate all over the place. अच्छा, एक चीज जो है, and this is where I would round it off and bring it to this sort of small closure before we move into other issues. Lynching has a certain sort of a past. As I said, in the Indian context, but lynching most importantly in the modern context has a past in the United States. Because lynching had always been a very significant aspect of how did white Americans treat black Americans. अच्छा, pre-1861 पीरियड का उसका एक फेज है और एक फेज उसका पोस्ट 1861 पीरियड का है. प्री 1861 पीरियड का फेज अलग इसलिए है क्योंकि प्री 1861 पीरियड में द ब्लैक अमेरिकन वाज नेवर सीन एज अ फुल सिटीजन ऑफ द कंट्री. ही वाज नॉट इवन सीन एज समबडी हु इज सब्जेक्ट प्रॉपर फॉर सिटीजनशिप. ही वाज सीन एज गुड्स ऑफ समबडी एल्स. तो आपका जो स्लेव ओनर है जिसने आपको खरीदा है, आप जिस तरह से उसके बाकी एसेट्स है, घर है, जमीन है, वैसे आप उसका एसेट हो. एंड एन एसेट कैन बी यूज्ड, अब्यूज्ड एट द विल ऑफ द पर्सन हु इज होल्डिंग द एसेट. सो इन दैट सॉर्ट ऑफ सिचुएशन लिंचिंग वाज हैपनिंग. इट्स नॉट दैट यू डिडंट हैव लिंचिंग एट दैट पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम, बट लिंचिंग डिड नॉट हैव द सेम सॉर्ट ऑफ स्टेटस. लिंचिंग डिड नॉट हैव द सेम सॉर्ट ऑफ कंसर्न इन लॉ for a simple reason, because you are essentially dealing with people who are not full citizens. Post 1861 the situation changes in the sense that black Americans become what is called as full citizens of the United States, at least legally and on paper. मतलब वो भी एक बहुत अजब किस्म का केस है. 1861 में full citizens बने हैं, पर in most cases in especially the southern United States 1955 तक इंतजार करना पड़ा है to get what is called as voting rights. So to wait almost till the 1950s when the Federal Supreme Court starts laying down the law in terms of granting what is called as full voting rights. उसके बाद जो है ना वो lynching है. Lynching proper, which is a concern of law. For a simple reason, because what you're doing is you are killing people who at least technically and legally are full citizens, are equal citizens in law with you. And yet you are treating them in this manner. And then those incidences of lynching. अच्छा, एक significant problem आज की तारीख में भी जो है 350 मिलियन का अमेरिकन पॉपुलेशन है, 35 करोड़ लोग हैं. 350 मिलियन अमेरिकन में से इट्स ओनली 13 to 15% of the country which says that they are African Americans. In the American case, you say as to what is your race, and of course you have a whole choice in terms of deciding as to what is your race. So it's only 15% of the country which says that we are black Americans or we are African Americans. Okay, एक तरह से they are almost in the same boat as the Dalits and the Muslims in India. In the face of something that tries to exclude you, you are as small in numbers as say for example these people are. आपकी संख्या कम है. Okay, and you have horrible cases, starting off from 1861 all the way to the Second World War का period, कि जिसमें you will have blacks across the United States being lynched for a whole range of reasons. Whole range, right reasons, wrong reasons. Most of the time you are lynched simply because of what you are. And what informs the mob's idea of what you are is the past that you were supposed to be a slave. So पहले के एक ज़माने में आप एक slave थे, आज के ज़माने में बड़ा इतरा के चल रहा है. So I don't know if you have observed it closely when it comes to Dalits and Muslims across India. What people in the non-metropolitan areas have a problem with them, when it comes to problems with them, is they are flashy. They are all over the place. They flaunt. So when it comes to these honor killings in Tamil Nadu or in Haryana, the most important things permanently is महंगी गाड़ियों पे आते हैं, हाँ अच्छे कपड़े पहनते हैं, गॉगल पहनते हैं, भारी किस्म के मोबाइल लेके घूमते हैं. These are what the Dalits, and they are not supposed to do this. हाँ शादी का ब्याह करता है, शादी में अपनी शादी में घोड़े पे बैठ के जाता है. अब बताइए ये इतना बड़ा कलयुग कब देखा था आपने कि दलित घोड़े पे बैठ के शादी में जा रहा है. अच्छा, to make matters worse, in some of these cases now they have a band with a DJ. It's like all the more troublesome. वो उसकी शादी में जा रहा है, उसकी शादी में ही is not supposed to go in this manner. कुछ एक मर्यादा नाम की चीज होती है, नहीं होती है. अगर भेड़ चमार घोड़ी पे चढ़ के बैंड डीजे के साथ शादी में जाएगा, मैं ठाकुरों का क्या होगा? You're not supposed to do that. So what informs you in this case is a past. जैसे the Americans who lynched the blacks, you're a slave, goddamn. That Lincoln made you free, that tail लेने तो slave है in the first place. How can you walk in that manner? How can you whistle? How can you be seen around my properties? Post 1861, something very strange happened in the United States. In state upon state, especially where they were emancipated in the southern states, local congresses, जो local legislature है state का, suddenly started defining new crimes in law. And ऐसे crimes कि जिस क्राइम का परमानेंट किस्म का जो विक्टिम है, जो क्रिमिनल है, वो इनवेरिएबली ब्लैक अमेरिकन है. They are vagrants, they are loiterers. वो वैग्रेंट होने ही वाला है ना. With 1861 came the breakup of the old economic system. अब वैसी वाली स्थिति में वो जॉब के लिए इधर उधर घूमने ही वाला है. So black Americans seen in our village who doesn't belong to our village becomes a perfect reason for him to be lynched. आपल्या गावातला नहीं है, हमारे गांव से नहीं है, किसी और गांव का है, पर इसीलिए उसको लिंच किया है. पर ब्लैक अमेरिकन है. Are you gone mad? Since when did slaves start becoming citizens? Slave is not a citizen, a slave is a slave. भारत आजाद हुआ, 70 साल हुए, विकास हुआ, चांद पे गए, मंगल पे गए, सब जगह का जाके आए, सही है ना? He was born as a Dalit because in the last birth he did something because of which he is born as Dalit in this line. ठाकुर में पैदा ना होता. So what informs my attitude about him is my pre-modern notion about him. These people can't buy their way through things as the Jews in Europe could. So just as you had the black Americans being lynched, you also have cases where the Jews in Central Europe were lynched. But in most of the pre-modern cases, till you don't have the coming in of this organized Thuggism of the Nazism variety, the Jews could escape it. For a simple reason, because they were necessary most of the time, because they used to get things into the village which the village never had any access to. गांव का रास्ता नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है, वो बेचारा बड़ी दूर से कुछ सामान लेके आता है जिसकी गांव को जरूरत है. वो वैसे आपको उससे खतरा है, आप उसके बारे में आपकी राय जो है वो खराब है, आप उसको पीटना तो चाहते हो, मारना भी चाहते हो, वो जरूरी भी है, वो कई केसेस में आपको पैसा भी दे सकता है. But the black American or the Dalit cannot do that. They were never supposed to be people who had any assets on them. Are you getting it? So what informs my attitude towards them is my pre-modern notion about them. And post 1861, the way in which it keeps on rising, horrible cases, horrible. The worst are these cases involving this extremely worrisome organization which has recently been seen in Trump America, called as a KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku was famous for burning blacks with burning tires on their necks. So you burn a tire and then you put that burning tire on his neck, and then you don't let anyone intervene in this, and you see him go down. in ashes. Almost like 9/11 में वो जैसे 2 buildings गई थी ना नीचे, वैसा. Horrible, एकदम horrible. Post 1945, it stopped. Now you don't get cases of lynching from the United States. It almost completely disappeared. अभी अगर लिंचिंग कभी होगा तो वो प्रॉपर वो जो बराक ओबामा के टाइम पे यू हैड दीज ब्लैक्स बीइंग इल ट्रीटेड इन द सिटीज ऑफ द यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स, बट मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम द पीपल इल ट्रीटिंग देम वर द अमेरिकन पुलिस. मतलब एक 10-12 पुलिसमैन का यूनिट है, and if you look at some of those cases which happened during Barack Obama's time, are very instructive. They are very instructive and very interesting cases. In the sense that you have a police officer shooting dead a black boy, 18 years in age, for a simple reason, because the officer confessed it in his legal trial. He looked menacing. He had a big body. He looked menacing. हाँ, उसने कुछ नहीं किया है, वो लड़के ने कुछ भी नहीं किया है, बस उसको देख के मुझे दहशत हुई, इसलिए मैंने उस पर गोली चलाई और वो मर गया. And of course, the courts have absolved the person. The matter now rests with the appellate courts, but the first courts wherein these cases happened, they have absolved them. Something very similar which happened in the Mohsin Sheikh case, when these under trials were granted bail by this very learned lawyer in this case, saying that कि नहीं वो उसको मारना नहीं चाहते थे, उसका जो रिलीजन है ना, उसने उनको प्रोवोक किया उसको मारने के लिए. The weirdest argument that can be made under the sun, weirdest, but this has been made by a judge in a case in India in 2017, in the 21st century, when we are supposed to be more modern, more civilized. You come up with this idea that इसको बेल क्यों ग्रांट करना है, क्योंकि उसका मुसलमान होना, उसने इसको प्रोवोक किया उसको मारने के लिए. That's the reason why I am granting bail to him, though I know well that he has killed him. This is where I say that, come to that first point, that the judiciary has failed, miserably failed. This is how American judges work. कि हाँ सही है, वो दिखता ही menacing है, क्या करेंगे, उसको मारेगा नहीं तो क्या करेगा फिर. The poor policeman with all his gadgets, with all his weapons, as you would see in any Hollywood movie, felt intimidated by a black teenager who appeared menacing to him. और इसलिए मैंने उस पर गोली चलाई और वो मर गया. उसके बाद आधे शहर में आग लगी to a point that the governor had to invoke emergency provisions. But that's fine, that's fine. I felt that he was menacing. So post 1945, it ceased, completely ceased. What took its place was the law. So what took its place is what is called as that disproportionate. 13%, only 1/3. इतना ही percentage है African Americans का. But if you look at African Americans in jail, 70% of people in jail are African Americans. Close to 65% of people who would be executed in any given calendar year would inevitably be African Americans. The same situation that you have in India. When it comes to Dalits and Muslims, the total number that you would have is such small. Disproportionate presence in crime. Disproportionate. इसका सबसे बड़ा प्रॉब्लम इस आर्गुमेंट का ये है, वो लोग. How can you use that word called as वो लोग in a functional democracy, which is also a nation state? वो लोग कैसे हो सकता है? वो जिस हम लोग का हिस्सा है, वो आपके नेशन का हिस्सा है ना, वो आपके वजूद का हिस्सा है. वो लोग कैसे बनता है? The minute you come up with that formulation कि वो लोग होते ही ऐसे हैं, you open up the latch in the law for the law to behave in this manner. So what mobs did once upon a time in the United States, post 1945, you will see the law taking its place. Lynching went down, but there's a disproportionate increase in the number of people who would be awarded capital punishment who in any given calendar year since 1945, on an average 65 to 70% of all Americans awarded capital punishment and hanged or electrocuted are what are called as blacks. So obviously the law is taking its course. Mobs need not do that ना. अगर लॉ अपना काम कर रहा है अपनी जगह पे तो मॉब क्यों करेगा काम? So this is how the Americans resolved their lynching का problem. Something which was perfectly illegal, an act of coercion, became a legal act of coercion. And now you need not worry about finding a black, then finding a tire to burn him. Leave it to the law. The law will take care of it. The law will hang him. You don't worry. And the law, ekdam perfectly and morally upright law, hangs him. That's one of the reasons why in most episodes of lynching across the world, one of the other arguments which has always been made, of course you have always got to remember this, that this argument works in a society where rule of law is paramount, absolute and comes without discrimination. This capital punishment should be abolished. Perfectly abolished in law. What ये उनका केस कैसा था? उनका केस था was from the mob going to the state. हमारा केस जो है ना वो is state going to the mob. I don't know how many of you have seen that Ajay Devgan movie called as Ganga Jal. Lynching, justified lynching. उसने गलत किया है ना, उसको पुलिस को हैंड ओवर करना. पुलिस को हैंड ओवर करके क्या करेंगे बाबू? आप जानते हो ना ये लोग कैसे होते हैं. फिर से ये लोग ऐसे ही होते हैं. He will buy his way through the judicial system, and our police and our judges are corrupt. So instead of relying on due process, which is cumbersome, takes time, most of the time is not transparent, doesn't happen in a language which we can understand, it's better that what you do is take recourse to mob justice, instantaneous, immediate, in front of you, transparent in your own language. Better. ये लोग, तो the problem is जो ये लोग कहेगा वो उसका जब गाड़ी रेड सिग्नल पे क्रॉस करेगा ट्रैफिक में, तो ट्रैफिक पुलिस को the first thing that is going to do is see to it that चालान नहीं कटेगा. आपको जितना पैसा है वो ले लो, पर आप हमको छोड़ दो. पर मॉब जस्टिस को जस्टिफाई करेगा, बिकॉज इन दैट ही हैज नो स्टेक्स, ही हैज नो चेस्टनट्स इन दैट फायर. क्योंकि वो डिस्क्रिमिनेशन हुआ है ना, ये लोग और हम. तो मॉब जस्टिस को कभी खुद को नहीं ये करना है, सब्जेक्ट करना है. कितना भी गलत आप करो, खुद को नहीं सब्जेक्ट करना है, किसी और को करना है. So this is a perverse form of decentralized sovereignty, in the case of which we the people of India, in our own fragmentary existences, decide to take the law in our own hands and exercise it to the best of effects. So if there was a case wherein the state took this away from the citizens, ours is a case in which the state is looking in the other direction while the citizens are doing whatever they are doing. The worst is the state, the highest echelons of the state in this manner almost condone these activities. Till date he hasn't said a word about Mohsen Sheikh's killing. And Mohsen's killing was very important because that happened, as I have always laid out the trajectory. 26th of May is when Modi was sworn in as Prime Minister of India. 2nd of June 2014 is when Mohsen was killed on Pune Solapur Road, in a case which has been perpetrated by outright Hindutva gangs, in a case when the Prime Minister needed to have expressed that one line of Twitter concern, one line at that point of time, आने वाले आगे के जितने भी प्रॉब्लम्स है ना वो सब सुलझ गए होते. But the absence of that one line almost conveyed it to anyone who was looking out for it Now the Prime Minister almost condones this. You can carry on with it. So yes, lynchings happened in the past. Yes, as I said, those women who are lynched as witches are lynched even now. But in most of those cases, you did not have this brazen an attitude of the state turning a blind eye to it. No, हमको इससे कोई लेना देना नहीं. One can understand this event once ना, आपकी ज़िंदगी में एक बार हुआ 2002 में, और हम समझ सकते हैं कि आप नए थे, you had become an administrator for the first time, you had no experience of it, so it took time. बार कैसे हो सकता है ना? और अगर बार हो रहा है and if you are doing nothing about it, तो कुछ तो प्रॉब्लम है ना? They were very clear about it in the past when it happened. हुआ उस वक्त हुआ. Maybe at that point of time the state wasn't present with its full force. But when it has happened, when it has been brought to its notice, the state will take action. Will book cases. You won't have ministers coming up with excuses. You won't have evasive messages being sent out कि नहीं, गो रक्षा करने वाला जो सच्चा गो भक्त है वो किसी की हत्या ही नहीं कर सकता है. तो फिर वो क्या हुआ है? वो सच्चा गो भक्त नहीं है, तो उसको बुक करोगे? ऐसे थोड़ी ना बुक करता है. ऐसे कि आप तो किसी को भी बुक करने के लिए बोलोगे, ऐसे किसी को थोड़ी ना बुक करेंगे. एविडेंस किधर है? सो आई एम इन अ टेरिबल टाइम एंड लेट मी बी वेरी क्लियर अबाउट दिस. आज उनको उनमें जो खामियां नजर आती है, पता नहीं किस फॉर्मेट में कल वो खामियां आप में नजर आए. और रीजन माई वी हैव गॉट टू स्टॉप इट इज दिस. एंड यू कांट एक्सपेक्ट द अमेरिकन सोल्यूशन, क्योंकि वो एक आदत सी है कि इन इंडिया इफ यू हैव अ प्रॉब्लम द सोल्यूशन इज अमेरिका. यू कांट एक्सपेक्ट एन अमेरिकन सोल्यूशन. Was the way in which the American state works through all its agencies, to believe that the Indian state can work in a similar manner. You are living in some very fabulous, you are living in a wonderland that is more fabulous than what Alice lived in. It's a hollowed out state, permanently hollowed out. Having had said this and so much, I submit it. Questions, comments, anything and everything under the sun is welcome.